Have you ever wondered why some people over 60 seem to maintain their strength, vitality, and muscle tone while others struggle to even lift a grocery bag? There's a silent war happening inside the aging body, a battle that determines how you age, how strong you remain, and whether your body stays resilient or begins to break down. And surprisingly, milk, yes, that creamy, innocent glass of childhood nutrition, has stepped into the spotlight of this war. For decades, milk has been painted as a perfect food: calcium, protein, vitamin D, a trifecta of benefits in every glass. But when it comes to muscle preservation and strength in the aging body, the truth is far more complex and sometimes deeply misunderstood. After age 60, the body begins to shift in powerful, sometimes invisible ways. One of the most profound of these shifts is the natural decline of muscle mass, a phenomenon known as sarcopenia. Starting around the age of 30, muscle mass begins to decrease gradually. But by the time someone reaches 60, that decline can accelerate, leading to weakness, loss of mobility, frailty, and an increased risk of falls. This isn't just about looking fit, it's about survival, autonomy, dignity. Now, picture this. Someone hears that milk is a good source of protein, and they start drinking a glass every day. But is that really enough? Is the kind of protein in milk actually helping their muscles fight off sarcopenia? Or is it simply a feel-good myth, a remnant of outdated dietary advice? Here's what science reveals. Milk contains two primary types of protein: casein and whey. Whey is a fast-digesting protein, rich in essential amino acids, including leucine, the key amino acid that directly stimulates muscle protein synthesis. Casein, on the other hand, digests slowly and provides a longer, steady release of amino acids. At a glance, this seems perfect. Yet, the question isn't whether milk can help, but whether it does. In the specific metabolic environment of a body over 60, the truth is, as we age, our bodies become less responsive to stimuli that once triggered robust muscle growth. This phenomenon is called anabolic resistance. In younger adults, even a moderate amount of protein, say 20 grams, is sufficient to stimulate muscle building after exercise. But for older adults, that same amount may not be enough. Their muscles are resistant. They require more, sometimes nearly double, and it needs to be delivered in a very specific way: timed, high quality, and leucine rich. So, here's the catch. While milk does contain high quality protein, an average glass, about 8 ounces, only delivers around 8 grams. That's far below the anabolic threshold required to overcome resistance and spark true muscle synthesis in an older adult. Drinking 1 glass a day? It's like sending a whisper into a storm. Not nearly enough to be heard. But it doesn't end there. Let's talk about digestion. As people age, many develop some degree of lactose intolerance. The ability to produce lactase, the enzyme required to digest lactose, milk sugar, naturally declines. For some, this results in mild discomfort. For others, it means bloating, cramps, and avoidance of dairy altogether. So even if milk could be helpful, the question remains: can the body tolerate it enough to benefit? And what about inflammation? Some voices in the nutritional world argue that milk, particularly in its processed, homogenized, ultra-pasteurized form, may contribute to low-grade systemic inflammation. In an aging body, where inflammation is already a lurking threat to muscle tissue and overall health, this is not a trivial concern. Chronic inflammation accelerates muscle breakdown, worsens insulin resistance, and contributes to the vicious cycle of aging-related decline. But let's be clear, not all milk is created equal. There's a monumental difference between the nutrient profile of grass-fed, organic, full-fat milk from well-raised cows versus the shelf-stable, ultra-processed varieties most people drink. One carries bioactive compounds that may support immunity and metabolic health. The other, often stripped of its natural structure, may serve more as a filler than a fuel. So, if you're over 60, standing in the kitchen wondering whether a glass of milk is really helping you build strength, you're not just sipping nostalgia. You're making a decision that could either support your aging muscles or leave them vulnerable to slow, invisible decay. And the decision isn't just about drinking milk. It's about understanding how your aging body responds to nutrition now, not 30 years ago. Because muscle isn't just about bulk, it's about purpose. It's about reaching for a grandchild without pain. It's about standing up from a chair without effort. It's about choosing to live with power instead of shrinking into fragility. And milk may have a role to play, but only if it's wielded with knowledge, intention, and precision. The muscle fibers of a 60-year-old do not respond to protein in the same way they did at 30. That's not a flaw of the body. It's the design of biology, and because of this, the nutritional strategy to protect muscle must change. The challenge is no longer about simply getting enough protein, but about how effectively that protein signals the body to use it. This is where the story of milk becomes both fascinating and frustrating. Leucine, the amino acid found abundantly in whey protein, is considered the spark plug of muscle protein synthesis. In aging adults, the threshold of leucine needed to ignite this process is significantly higher. Clinical studies now suggest that older adults require roughly 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine per meal to optimize muscle building potential. To put this into perspective, a typical glass of milk offers only about 0.8 grams of leucine. That means a person would need to consume over 3 full glasses in one sitting to meet this threshold. But how many actually do that? And even if they did, would their digestive systems tolerate it? More critically, milk is rarely consumed in isolation. It's often sipped with toast, cereal, or a light breakfast. These carbohydrate-heavy meals shift the focus of digestion and metabolism toward insulin response, not anabolic signaling. The leucine in milk gets diluted by the rest of the meal, and the opportunity for powerful muscle synthesis is blunted. Timing, quantity, and context, they all matter far more after 60 than ever before. Even more sobering is what happens during inactivity. Just 1 week of reduced activity, such as after a surgery, injury, or even a vacation, can cause significant muscle loss in older adults. In fact, older individuals can lose up to 10% of their muscle mass during 2 weeks of bed rest. The body becomes catabolic. Muscles are broken down and metabolized, and recovery becomes harder and slower with each episode. In this state, a glass of milk does little to combat the breakdown. Muscle needs more than milk. It needs a strategy. There is also the question of absorption and bioavailability. As digestion slows with age, so does the efficiency with which nutrients are absorbed. Even if you drink enough milk, how much of that protein and calcium is actually utilized by your body? It's a haunting truth. Many older adults consume what they believe is a muscle-supporting diet, only to find that their strength continues to erode, subtly, year by year. To complicate matters further, insulin sensitivity decreases with age. This impacts how amino acids are transported into muscle cells. Simply put, the older body may have the building blocks, but it doesn't always know what to do with them. This is why combining protein with some form of resistance or strength training becomes absolutely essential. Without it, even high-quality protein, including milk, can be rendered almost useless in the fight against muscle loss. Now, imagine this scenario. A man in his mid-60s, recently retired, wants to stay healthy. He drinks milk with his morning cereal, walks a few times a week, avoids fast food. He believes he's doing everything right, but he's not engaging in resistance training. He's not eating meals high enough in leucine. He's not spacing his protein intake evenly throughout the day. Slowly, subtly, his muscle mass declines, his metabolism slows, his balance falters, and he doesn't realize what's happening until it's too late, until he struggles to get up from a chair or suffers a fall that begins the downward spiral so common in older adults. This is the dark side of the milk myth, the belief that simple consumption equals protection. It doesn't. Muscle maintenance after 60 is not passive. It is a daily act of defiance against decline. That said, milk can still be a part of the solution, but not in the way most people think. It must be seen as a tool, not a cure. For those who tolerate it well, milk, especially high-protein dairy like Greek yogurt or milk fortified with extra whey, can contribute to the daily leucine requirement, but it must be combined with other sources of protein, ideally spread throughout 3 or 4 meals per day, each one crafted with intention. More powerful still is pairing this protein intake with resistance exercise. A 2020 undécimo o fastor, meta-analysis of older adults revealed that individuals who combined protein supplementation with resistance training had significantly greater gains in muscle strength and size compared to those who only consumed protein or exercised alone. This synergy of fuel and stimulus is the real secret. Milk without motion is like fuel without fire. It sits, it waits, it fades. So ask yourself, are you drinking milk because you believe it works? Or because you were told it works? Do you understand how much your body has changed, metabolically, hormonally, structurally? And have you adapted your nutrition to match? This is not about fear. This is about awakening. What most people fail to realize is that muscle isn't just tissue. It's a living engine of health, immunity, and independence. Especially after 60, muscle becomes the very thing that determines whether a person walks tall or stoops in weakness, whether they live at home or are confined to assisted care. And yet, far too many continue to believe that a passive approach, a glass of milk, a daily stroll, is enough to guard this precious resource. But science tells a harsher story. As we age, the endocrine system subtly shifts. Hormones like testosterone, estrogen, growth hormone, and IGF-1, all of which support muscle growth and recovery, begin to wane. This hormonal decline makes muscle synthesis even harder to achieve. Even with protein present, milk, while rich in nutrients, cannot compensate for this hormonal resistance. It does not contain the anabolic signals necessary to override this systemic change. And yet, something remarkable happens when milk's protein is paired with resistance. When a 65-year-old lifts weights or performs body weight training, it triggers a cascade of intracellular signals that wake up the dormant machinery of muscle building. In this heightened state, the body becomes more receptive to the amino acids in milk, particularly leucine-rich whey, and suddenly, that same glass that once felt ineffective becomes meaningful. The key wasn't just in the milk, it was in the preparation of the body to receive it. But timing is everything. Post-exercise is the prime window. Within 30 to 60 minutes after strength training, muscles become more insulin sensitive, more metabolically active, and more responsive to protein intake. Consuming a high leucine, fast-digesting protein like whey during this window is like throwing logs onto an already blazing fire. The result? Muscle synthesis that actually matters. Synthesis that builds, repairs, and defies the clock. Now, consider this. Milk, by itself, offers about 8 grams of protein per cup. Whey protein concentrate, on the other hand, can provide up to 25 grams in a single scoop, with 2.5 grams of leucine, hitting the anabolic threshold almost perfectly. This is why clinical recommendations now lean toward whey supplementation, especially in elderly populations dealing with sarcopenia. It's not that milk is harmful, it's that it's simply not enough, not targeted, not potent in the right way. Even more alarming is the undercurrent of malnutrition among older adults. It's hidden in plain sight, in low appetite, in skipped meals, in the light eating that seems harmless but gradually starves the muscles. According to the National Health and Nutrition Examination survey, over 40% of adults over 70 fail to meet even the minimum daily protein requirements. And the consequences? Wasting, weakness, hospitalization, loss of independence. So what should one do? First, rethink the narrative. Protein needs to be a priority, not an afterthought. That means aiming for at least 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day for active older adults, nearly double the outdated RDA. And this protein must be distributed evenly across meals. Not just a protein-heavy dinner, not just a glass of milk at night, but 3 to 4 protein-rich meals, each purposefully constructed. Second, recognize the power of resistance. Not cardio alone, not light walks, but meaningful, progressive, muscle-challenging movements. Squats, lunges, push-ups, resistance bands, free weights, whatever the body can handle safely and consistently. Third, choose your proteins with precision. Milk can support, but not carry, this journey. It may serve as a bridge, a component, a recovery tool. But for those serious about aging strong, it's the concentrated forms, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, whey protein isolate, that do the heavy lifting. And fourth, listen to your body. If milk causes digestive discomfort, bloating, or inflammation, don't ignore the signs. Consider lactose-free versions or shift entirely to plant-based proteins that meet the same anabolic criteria, like pea protein, soy isolate, or rice blend combinations fortified with leucine. You are not passive in this process. You are the architect. Milk may be part of the blueprint, but your decisions, your food choices, your movement, your consistency are the beams and steel that shape the future. Muscle after 60 is not a gift. It is earned, protected, fought for. It is the rebellion against decay. And every sip, every rep, every meal can either build or betray that rebellion. So the next time someone tells you, just drink your milk, it'll help, you'll know the truth. You'll know that strength is not in the carton. It's in the strategy. There is something deeply empowering about understanding your own biology, especially after 60. When the world begins to quietly lower its expectations of your body, you have a choice: to accept decline as inevitable, or to engage in deliberate, informed action. And milk, so often marketed as a comforting constant, sits at the crossroads of that decision. Let's go even deeper. Beyond protein, milk contains a spectrum of nutrients relevant to aging: calcium, vitamin D, potassium, magnesium, and small but meaningful amounts of B vitamins. These nutrients are not incidental. Calcium and vitamin D, in particular, are essential to maintaining bone density, a crucial ally of muscle strength. But again, the context matters. Without enough resistance on the bones, without the mechanical stress of weight-bearing movement, these nutrients struggle to find their purpose. The interplay between bone and muscle is more than metaphorical. They are biologically intertwined through a network of mechanical, hormonal, and inflammatory signals. This relationship is called the muscle-bone unit. As muscle weakens, it pulls less force on bone, leading to less stimulation for bone maintenance. Over time, this contributes to osteoporosis, brittle bones that fracture easily, even during minor falls. And what often causes those falls? You guessed it, weakened muscles. So, when someone drinks milk to keep bones strong, the assumption is not entirely false, but it's incomplete. Calcium needs muscle, bone needs stress, and both need synergy. Otherwise, nutrients flow into the system like water into a cracked vessel, present but ineffective. Now, let's turn the light on. Inflammation, a quiet thief in the aging process. Chronic low-grade inflammation, often referred to as inflammaging, gradually damages muscle tissue, disrupts insulin signaling, and blunts the response to protein intake. the body becomes metabolically rigid, stuck in a state of low efficiency. And here's where it gets controversial. Some research suggests that certain components of commercial dairy may trigger or sustain this inflammatory state in susceptible individuals. A1 beta-casein, a protein found in the milk of most modern dairy cows, has been associated with gut discomfort and inflammatory markers in some studies. In contrast, milk from cows that produce A2 beta-casein exclusively, such as certain heritage breeds, appears to be gentler on the digestive system. This difference, though subtle, may be profound for an older adult whose gut health already hangs in delicate balance. So, is the answer to switch to A2 milk? Maybe. But for many, the deeper solution lies not just in which milk they drink, but why and when. If milk is simply a habit, a symbol of nourishment without scrutiny, it may serve more as placebo than power. But if it's part of a coordinated system, timed with training, optimized with other nutrients, measured with understanding, it can become a tool of transformation. Let's talk about recovery. After any strength training session, muscles enter a critical recovery phase. This is when inflammation rises temporarily, a normal and necessary part of adaptation. But older adults must be cautious here. If inflammation remains too high for too long, recovery becomes impaired. Protein intake, particularly leucine-rich protein, can reduce this window of vulnerability by accelerating repair. And milk, especially whey, delivers this in a palatable, accessible form. In fact, several clinical trials have demonstrated that older adults who consume whey protein after resistance training show measurable improvements in lean body mass, grip strength, and functional performance. Not just statistical improvements, but changes that translate to daily life. The ability to climb stairs, to rise from the ground, to carry groceries without strain. And yet, the magic isn't in the milk alone. It's in the ritual, the deliberate choice to fuel the body at the right time, with the right quality, in the right dose. This level of precision was once reserved for athletes. Now, it belongs to the aging warrior, the man or woman who refuses to surrender their muscle, their strength, or their sovereignty. The real tragedy is that most people over 60 never receive this knowledge. They are told to eat a little protein, stay active, drink milk, without being shown the science, the nuance, the power of deliberate timing and strategy. They are underfed, undertrained, and underserved by a system that assumes they are too old to adapt. But the human body is resilient. Even after 60, even after decades of sedentary habits, it can respond to intelligent input. Muscle fibers can regrow, strength can return, balance can be retrained. Autonomy can be reclaimed, but only when action replaces assumption. So, drink milk if you choose, but do it with awareness, pair it with movement, elevate it with intent, and never, ever assume that a single food, no matter how glorified, holds the answer to aging well. You do, and that's the secret the dairy industry never told you. Imagine this. A person in their 70s, standing at the edge of two futures. In one, they walk upright, arms strong enough to lift grandchildren, legs steady enough to hike a hill, spine tall with dignity. In the other, they shrink, not just in height, but in strength, independence, freedom. The difference between those two paths is not luck. It is not genetics. It is not even age. It is choice. And while milk may be a familiar comfort from childhood, its role in that choice, in the battle for muscular vitality after 60, is neither magical nor meaningless. It is conditional. If paired with resistance training, high enough leucine intake, smart nutrient timing, and digestive compatibility, milk can be a supportive ally. But as a standalone savior, the science does not support it, not anymore. Not when the stakes are this high. The era of passive aging must end. We cannot afford the soft language of just do your best or A little is better than nothing when the consequences of sarcopenia are this brutal. Loss of mobility, dependence on others, falls that lead to hip fractures and hospitalization. These are not distant threats. They are real, common, and often irreversible once set in motion. But here's what's equally real: the power to prevent them. Muscle is not selfish. It responds even after years of neglect. It listens to resistance. It absorbs protein. It heals. It returns. But only when you rise above the misinformation, the assumptions, the outdated dietary advice of the past. So don't just ask, is milk good for my muscles? That's too simple a question for such a complex machine. Ask instead, am I eating with intention, training with purpose, nourishing my body in ways that fight decline, or quietly allow it? This is the threshold. This is the moment. Because after 60, you are no longer building a body for beauty or competition. You are building it for life, for climbing stairs, for bathing unassisted, for laughing without fear of imbalance, for pushing open a door, not waiting for someone else to do it for you. And isn't that the point? To remain sovereign in your own skin. To hold on to the joy of movement, not surrender it to aging's slow erosion. You are not fragile. You are not finished. Your body may be older, but it is still listening, still learning, still capable of change. You simply have to feed it what it truly needs. So take the knowledge you've gained about leucine thresholds, anabolic resistance, digestive health, inflammation, timing, and training, and use it. Let it sharpen your choices. Let it rewrite your habits. Let it be the foundation of a stronger, more independent version of you. Because the truth isn't that milk is bad. The truth is that milk is only as good as the system it supports. And the system is you. Stand up. Pick up the weights. Build the meals. Make every rep, every bite, every moment count. You are not here to fade quietly. You are here to reclaim your strength with knowledge, with power, and with precision. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like it to support the channel. Share it with your loved ones who might need this information, and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming content on health, nutrition, and how to stay strong and energized after 60. Your health deserves attention. And this journey starts right here.